Good day, everybody. I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 1 English lesson on irregular past tense. And before we start with our lesson on irregular past tense, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. We're going to log on with our username as well as our password. Once you've logged on with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts. Grade 1. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of irregular past tense. So we're going to find out what irregular past tense is. But all we know is that when we talk about tense, always talk about past tense, and then we're specifically talking about something that happened in the past, meaning it happened already. So we're doing the chapter of irregular past tense. Our subject is English, which is language arts, grade 1. And the lessons that we're going to be focusing on under the chapter of irregular past tense is to identify the irregular past tense. So we're going to identify the irregular past tense. So at the moment, we know that past tense, it means that it is something that had already happened. It happened in the past. It happened already. It's in the past. Right? So we're going to find out more about the irregular part, right? Why we say irregular past tense. So basically, some verbs, they tell about something that has already happened, right? Meaning it happened already, it is gone, it's done, right? We've moved on. So these verbs, they tell about the past. And usually verbs that tell us about the past, right? They usually end in ed. So d, if the verb ends with an e, but ed to be exact. And an example is, we walked to the park yesterday. So we walked to the park yesterday. So basically, if we identify our past tense, right, or a verb, then it would be walked. And walked gives us the indication that it is the verb, but also that it happened in the past. Because walked, right, there we even it even ends in ed. It gives us the indication that this word, it happened already, right? We looked at the flowers there. So looked is our verb. It's something that they did. So looked, and there you can also see it ends in ed. And if we look at that two words, right? Walked. The verb that is in the present tense of walked is walk, right? And in the past tense, as we can see, it is walked. So walked shows the past tense and it ends with an ed. That gives us the idea that this is basically, it basically tells us about the past. The word, let's say the letters ed. And the same with looked, right? The present tense verb is just look. But in the past, right, they looked, or we looked at the flowers there. And there we have the ed. And there's quite a few other verbs also that we can think of, or examples that we can think of. But at the moment, that is two of the examples. You can even say, if we look at the word jump, that is the present tense, right? And the past tense of that specific word is jump. So this is now, which is in the present, and this is in the past. And this is basically examples of our past tense verbs, right? Just our past tense verb. But now we're coming to what the actual meaning of the top of our chapter is, right? So then we have some of our verbs. They are irregular in the past tense. So they're irregular in the past tense. And the verbs that are irregular in the past tense, these verbs, they change their spelling to tell about the past. So as you can see with the regular past tense, right? Let's say, for example, like walked and looked. Walked and looked, all we did was we just added an ed. Because if the word in the present tense is walk, right? Then all we did was to show the past tense of that specific word was we added an ed. So there we still have the specific word, but we add ed to show the past tense form. Same with look, yes. So look, the same with look also, yes. So we just add an ed to show the past tense, right? So those are regular verbs. But irregular verbs over here. So irregular past tense, they change the spelling to tell about the past. So we don't just add ed. There's no rule that we follow to say that we just add ed. Because these verbs, they change the spelling to tell about the past. So you're just going to have to remember what the spelling or what spelling to use. For example, we see some ducks at the park. So, sorry, we saw some ducks at the park. This is in the past. We saw some ducks at the park, which means that if we identify our past tense verb, we can say it is saw, right? It's something that they did, they saw, right? But now the present tense verb of that word is see, right? So it is see, and the past tense form is saw. So as you can see how the spelling of that word has changed. We didn't just add an ed, but the wording changed, right? From S-E-E-C to SAW, saw. See something I do now? Saw is something that I did in the past. We ate lunch on the grass. So we ate lunch on the grass. So ate is our irregular past tense. Ate. And the present tense form of ate is eat. It's eat, right? So the past tense of eat is ate. And can you see how the meaning of these two words has changed? We didn't just add an ed, we didn't just add a d, right? The spelling of that word specifically changed. Because eat is E-A-T, something that we are doing now. I'm eating something. I eat lunch, I eat cake. But in the past, I ate. It's like that wording it's like the words are jumbled up. If we look at another word, look at the word run. Run is something that someone does now, right? It's like where they run after the ball, they run to the bus stop. But the past tense of the word run is ran. And the word or the spelling changed. Because as you can see, the U changed to an A. The same with sing. Just one more. Sing. Right? Sing. Something that we're doing now. The girl sing beautifully. But in the past, she sang beautifully. And there also the spelling changes. We don't just add an ed. So with regular past tense, we just add ed. It's like a rule that we follow. But with irregular past tense, right, there's no rule that you need to follow. You're just going to have to remember the spelling to use because the verb changes its spelling to tell about the past. All right, so now we're going to look at a few more examples of irregular verbs, right? And a few more examples of irregular verbs. I'm going to push this over here, and then I'm going to write the other side. So, heard. Heard. If we look at that word heard, right? The present tense form of heard is yeah. So heard, I'm going to put number one. So I'll use specifically that word. So yeah is the present tense. So I hear you. It's like saying I hear you, or I hear the music. And in the past, we can say I heard the music, right? If we look at number two, fed. So fed, right? Number two. Mom says that you need to feed the dogs, right? So the present tense of that word is feed. So the present tense of that specific word is feed. And in the past, or yesterday, or the day before, I fed the dogs. So as you can see so far, how the wording changed, the spelling of the specific words changed. Can you hear me now? Let's look at this word, drive, or drove, sorry. So drove is the irregular past tense form, right? Of drive. Drive is something that we are doing now. And in the past, we drove to the museum. All right, I'm going to look at another word. Let's look at slipped, right? Slipped. Slipped is like saying, I'm going to put the number that you can see over here. Slipped is, if we show slip like now in the present, then we say sleep. I'm literally speaking on my loudest. My volume is up. Also on max. Who else can hear me? I'm gonna try to speak even a bit louder. All right, so sleep. Sleep is it shows as something that someone is doing now, right? But in the past, I slept like a baby. Let's look at this word. Set. So I sit in front of the TV, And in the past, I sat in front of the TV. So this is just a few examples of irregular verbs, right? So a few examples of irregular verbs, and the words that are underlined, right? There we wrote down the past tense and the present tense form as well as the past tense. And if you look at how the wording changes, right? Then you can see how the spelling changes of those specific words. So this is how it changes from, let's say, the present tense to its past tense. And that is specifically what we're doing today. We're doing irregular past tense, right? We don't just add ed. We can literally see that the spelling or the wording changes of that specific word when we show the irregular past tense verb or the irregular past tense form of that specific verb. So you're just going to have to know the specific verb when you basically write down its past tense form. So we don't just add ed because that means it is a regular past tense. But in this case, we're doing irregular past tense, right? All right, so now we're going to our tutorial lesson, which is on aplusstudents.ca. And our chapter is irregular past tense. And the lesson that we are doing today is to identify the irregular past tense. And we already see that some verbs that tell about something that has already happened, right? And things that have already happened, right? It happened. It basically tells us about the past. And they usually end in ed. And we made an example of walked, looked. We made an example of jumped, right? But then some of our verbs are irregular in the past tense. And these verbs, they change their spelling to tell about the past. So you're going to have to remember what spelling to use. Because we don't just add ed, we don't just add d, but the wording or the spelling changes of that specific word. And we made an example of see and saw, eat and ate. All right, so now if we look at the word go, this is the present tense form, go. If you look at the word go, what do you think is the past tense form of go? Now I go to the shop. So I go to the shop to buy snacks. But yesterday I to the shop. What is the past tense form of go? What do you think is the past tense form of go? So the past tense form of go, right? If I go to the shop now to buy snacks, yesterday we can say I went to the shop to buy snacks. So if you look at these two words, can you see how the verb has changed its spelling? Right? It went from go being the present tense, and it's like the whole word changed to went. So go is our present tense form. I go to the shop. In the past, I went to the shop. So basically, like they're saying, go tells about what's happening now, it's about the present, and went tells about something that already happened in the past. So the children went to the shop. If we look at the word sing, if we look at the word sing, the children sing beautifully. But what do you think is the past tense form of the word sing? If sing shows the present, what is the past tense of sing? The irregular past tense of sing. So the children sing beautifully. Yesterday, the children beautifully. What is that specific word? Remember, we are doing the irregular past tense, right? Where we don't add ed. The word changes. The verb changes its spelling. So we don't add ed, right? We are here where our verb changes. So the past tense of sing. And if we identify the past tense of sing, then we can say sang. So sang is our past tense verb. So can you see how one of that letters have changed? Sing is present, which shows now, but sang is in the past, right? Because with irregular verbs, we we don't add an ed, and that is why I scratched out the ed. So sang. So sing and sang. Okay, let's do one more before we do our test. The children falls. So the children fall from the tree or up the tree. So fall. What is the past tense of fall? She falls to the ground or falls to the ground. What is the past tense of full? And if we look at the past tense of fall, we can say it is fell. Children fell out of the tree, or the children fell to the ground, right? So fall is the present tense. It shows now. But in the past, we say fell. And there we see the word has changed. All right, so now we're going on to our test, where we are going to identify the irregular past tense. So now if we look at the two sentences, right, we need to say which sentence tells us about the past. Do we say Tess took some food to Mrs. Chan, or Tess takes some food to Mrs. Chan? That shows the past tense, or it tells us about the past. Is it took or takes? So which sentence tells us about the past? Tess took some food to Mrs. Chan, or Tess takes some food to Mrs. Chan? Which sentence tells us about the past? All right, so if we select the sentence that tells us about the past, we can say Tess took some food to Mrs. Chan. Takes is something that she does now. In the past, I took, or Tess took some food to Mrs. Chan. So took shows us the past tense verb. So which sentence tells us about the past? Do we say we hid dad's shoes, or we hide dad's shoes? Which one shows the past tense? We hid dad's shoes, or we hide dad's shoes? Which one shows the past tense? Hid or hide? And if we identify which sentence tells about the past, right, then hid tells us about the past. Because hide is something that you do now, but in the past, we hid dad's shoes. So now also, we need to say which sentence tells us about the past. We did this one. The children go into the barn or the children went into the barn. Which one is the past tense? Is it go or went that shows the sentence that tells us about the past? And if we select the sentence that tells us about the past, we can say, the children went into the barn. Because go shows us something that happens now, but in the past, the children went into the barn. All right. And went is correct. Yes, the second one is correct. Well done. So, which sentence tells about the past? Do we say Tim does his homework or Tim did his homework? So, is it does or did? Which one shows the past tense? Yes, and did shows the past tense. Well done. Did is correct. Did shows the past tense, so well done. Which sentence tells us about the past? Nina saw a boat on the lake or Nina sees a boat on the lake. Which one shows the past tense? It's a sentence that tells us about the past. Is it Nina saw a boat on the lake or Nina sees a boat on the lake? I'm sure he's just joking about being a hacker. Otherwise, he would have hacked into the system already. I hear you, Samuel. I think that one is just trying to. He's not listening and paying attention, and now he's trying to disturb us by saying he's a hacker. But we're almost done. We have 5 more minutes left. All right. So, do we say Nina saw a boat on the lake that tells us about the past, or Nina sees a boat on the lake? So if we were to identify the verb that tells us about the past, we can say Nina saw. Because see is something I do now, and in the past I saw. So Nina saw a boat on the lake. So saw is basically it tells us about the past. All right. It says, we sit under the tree. We sit under the tree, or we sat under the tree. Which sentence tells about the past? Is it we sit under the tree, or we sat under the tree? And if we want to know which sentence tells us about the past, then yes, we can say we sat under the tree. And sat is correct because sit is something that we're doing now. And in the past, we sat under the tree. So sat is correct. So well done. All right, let's do the last one. Which sentence tells us about the past? The bus comes down the road, or a bus came down the road. So a bus comes down the road, or a bus came down the road. So a bus comes down the road or came down the road. Which one is what tells us about the past? Comes or came? And if we were to identify which sentence tells us about the past, we can say a bus came down the road. So the word came is the sentence that tells us about the past. All right, so now our class is over, right? So we mentioned about the irregular past tense. We said when it comes to irregular past tense, then we don't just add an ed, but the spelling of the word, it changes, right? So the irregular past tense shows us what happens in the past. And like we say, the spelling changes of the specific word. So you basically going to have to know basically what word it changes to in the past tense, right? Because we do not add just ed because it's the irregular past tense. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on irregular past tense. Thank you very much for those of you who listened, and thank you very much for those of you who interacted and wanted to be part of the lesson. And I really hope you're going to have a good day further. Goodbye.